Hi, welcome back to Netcode Hub channel. In today's video, we are diving into an essential aspect of securing our microservices architecture, and that is adding JWT authentication to our microservices that use Ocelot as an API gateway. If you have been following along, you know we've already created our microservices and set up Ocelot to redirect all API calls seamlessly. Now is a time to add an extra layer of security. Imagine a scenario where your microservices handle sensitive data, such as user information or financial transactions. Without proper authentication, anyone could access your services, potentially leading to data breaches and unauthorized access. That is where JWT, that is JSON Web Token authentication, comes in. JWT provides a compact and secure way to transmit information between parties as a JSON object. By adding JWT authentication to our API gateway, we can ensure that only authenticated and authorized users can access our microservices. So in this video, I'll walk you through the step-by-step process of implementing JWT authentication in our Ocelot API gateway, ensuring that each microservice request is authenticated. So let's get started and secure our microservices like a pro. So in the previous video, this is what we have been doing. If you haven't checked any of the videos out, you can check the video description. I have the links in there. We've created projects in here. As you can see, we have 4 projects, 1 as a library, 3 as APIs. Within that, we have 1 as a gateway, and also we have the 2 as services in there. These make up our microservice. Okay. So in the gateway, we installed the Ocelot package, and we've configured the service in as a route by creating an ocelot.json file and specifying the route in here. Currently, we have 2 endpoints or 2 services. So we have 2 services or 2 routes also specified, and that is the API/user, and also we have an API/weather forecast. Aside from that, we created a base URL which will be accessed by the client, and then we have our upstream which also will be accessed by the client, and we have a downstream which is going to be accessed by the Ocelot API gateway. Alright, so if you want to actually understand this well, check the video description and now watch the previous videos. Good, now let's go and add authentication. There are several ways of adding authentication to this. By this project, I'm going to create a separate project which will handle authentication in our microservices. So before we dive right into that, I have already launched this for you to see what is going on. Let's see, I have this created. Okay, so this is what we did previously. I'm just trying to show you where we are. Now you can see from here we have weather forecast. This is our weather API. This is our user API. Now we cannot directly access this endpoint. You cannot do that. You're going to have forbidden. But you can access it through the gateway, the API gateway. You have forbidden. But here you can access it with the default port of 7000. And in here we're going to have 7000/API. Then you're going to have user. So that is the route for this user. And you can see we have the user in here. Aside from that, you can also access the same route and now get the weather forecast. So by making it API, then we have our weather forecast. And you can also get this weather forecast record or data. So you can see that this was configured in the previous video. Now you know how we can restrict all requests and then direct all requests through the API gateway. Alright, now in order for us to add authentication, let's add separate project. So I'm going to add another project to this. So right click on solution, then let's add a new project. And now this is going to be an API as well. So we choose the ASP.NET Core Web API. And now this is authentication. Authentication API. Now let's click on create. And in here, we need to add this to the project. So let's do that. After we have this project created and been added, you can see we have it in here, authentication API. Right click on dependencies and let's install a NuGet package, which will be useful in the authentication creation. So let's have Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.authentication.gwt bearer and make sure you install this package to the project. So now that this has been installed successfully, you can cross-check from dependencies, packages, and you see it over here. Great. Now when you go to program.cs file, you can see we have this in here, but let's install Swagger as well. So if you don't have that, I don't have it, so I have to install. Let's install ASP.NET Core. So the same place, and I think Swagger. So that is a swashbuckle.asp.NET Core. Let's install this package as well. So after we are done, we go to the program. Now let's add the service in here. So we're gonna have builder.services.add swagger gen. Then as we are done with this, we need to add the pipeline. So what we have in here, we can check if the environment is under development, we can add that, but for now we can skip that. Or maybe we can bring it. So app dot, then we're gonna have environment dot is development. Then what are we going to do? That is where you want to introduce use a Swagger. So, and also use Swagger UI. Good. So we have our Swagger integrated successfully. So let's go to our solution. And I can see from here, let's check the Ocelot, the port for each of the API that we created already. Now, when you go to, that's the gateway ocelot.json, you can see that you have from the user, it is 7001 for the port. Now, weather forecast 7002. And now from the gateway, it is 7000. So we can make the authentication here as 7003, right? And this should be in an HTTP. So let's go to authentication, properties, line setting.json. And now where we have this, the profiles, where we have this HTTP, we're going to make this as 7003. I think so. So that's 7003. And then we have 7001, 702, and then 703. So we need to also make it 7003. Great. So now that we are done, we need to go back again and now add our JWT configuration. So let's add a service in here. And there's going to be builder.services.add authentication. And now this authentication, we need to specify our JWT bearer. So with this, that is a bearer default. And we need to use the namespace. So .authentication scheme. And after that, let's add JWT bearer. You can give it a name, but let's skip that. So option maps to, we need to have it in this. All right, so in here, let's grab our key first. So key, we're going to use encoding. Now this encoding is coming from system.test. And now with this, we have our key. But before we do this, we have to first set the key first. So let's go to the app_setting.json, and that is where we need to set our key. Let's app_setting.json in here. Good. And now let's have a section known as authentication. Then we need to specify our key. So now this key, I have a key here. It should be more than 16. So let me grab my key. And aside from that, we need to specify our issuer. So at times with the issuer, we can skip that. But let's set it. So with the issuer, there is an HTTP because you want to use an HTTP of this, and I will set it localhost. The port is 7003. I think so. When you cross-check from the Ocelot, we have 7003, so it means the API or the authentication will be 7003. Check the launch settings from the HTTP, it is 7003. Great. Then let's have the audience. So we can make a copy of this, and I'll set this to audience. And it is the same. Alright, so now we have this. We want to grab our key, and that's what we're going to use. So in our program.cs, let's get it in here. Now we need to use encoding.utf8, and in that we want to get byte out of it. Which I'm talking about? Talking about this builder.configuration. We can use get section in here, and now let's specify section as authentication, then key, and in that you want to grab 8 value. This could be null, so let's check it. Okay, so authentication, we have location. Yes, so that is authentication, and now the key, and that is what you want to grab, authentication, and now this key. Great. So we have our key in here. The next thing that we're going to do here is we can actually state our issuer and audience. So let's have string. We say this is issuer. Now this is builder.configuration. So, and now with this configuration, we can even set authentication. Then we can grab the issuer. And now we can also do same to the audience. Okay. So let's start setting up this. So we're going to say there's an options dot required metadata. Let's set this to false. Aside from that, we're going to say options dot save token. Let's set this to true. Options dot, so token handler, or that's a token validation parameters. We have to set it new instance, and now within that we need to specify, let's say validate issuer. This is true. Then let's have validate audience to, set this to true. Aside from that, this is validate. Okay, now let's set validate lifetime. So with the lifetime, we are not having a refresh token yet, so let's set this to false. So our token never expires. So false. Then validate issuer sign-in key. We have it in here. So validate issuer sign-in key, set this true, and let's have a valid audience and now valid issuer. So valid issuer is equal to the issuer that we have, and valid audience is equal to the audience that we have as well. And the last one, let's specify the issuer sign key and as equal to new symmetrical symmetric security key. So symmetric security key, I think new. So we can get it from here, and now let's pass in the key that we have from our app settings, and that is this key. Okay, so we have the settings being set up. Now we need to add calls because we're going to make an endpoint call to this. So we need to activate the call. Let's do it straight. So let's have a builder.services. Whoa. So builder.services.add calls. Then with this calls, we can specify an option. Now we say this options.add default policy. Now on this policy, maybe we can have a builder. Then we have this builder.allow any header, allow any method, then allow any origin. That is what we want. So when we are done, let's register this. So app.useCalls. Okay, so we have this set. Now let's go in and create our controller. So we're going to do everything in the controller. We are not actually going to connect to database. We're going to create concurrent dictionary, which takes in username and password, and we're going to keep that as a temporary data for now. So let's go to our controller, and now in here in the authentication endpoint or the authentication project, we go to this controller, and this controller, maybe we can, let's change this to accounts. So account controller, and let's remove all this. So there's going to be an async task, and let's make it as action results. And that is account. So for the route, it is API account. Okay, so maybe we can have a wait task.delay. Let's delay this by 500 milliseconds. And aside from that, let's create a private variable to handle the list of users in here. So this is going to be private static, and let's use concurrent dictionary. So we have concurrent dictionary, which takes in string and now string. And now so this is user data. We have our get and set. And now this is equal to new of this. So this is what we're going to use to hold the data. Okay. Now the first here, we're going to have the login, maybe register. So let's have a login. That's HTTP post. Now with this post, we're going to say this is login. That is a route. So here the route is going to be API/account. Then we have our login. Okay, then in here we're going to be using parameters. So we need our username, or let's say email. Then we're going to have password. So this is what's going to be for the route here. So log in. Now since there's going to be post, let's specify our string. That's our email, and we have our string, and that can be our password. All right, so in here, what are we going to do? Let's first get the email from the list here. Let's check if the user is already in here. So we're going to say this is get email. Then we can say that is user data dot. We can have keys in there. Now maybe we can use first or default or where. Then in here, we're going to say this email is equal to the email coming in. Okay. Now aside from that, what are we doing? We can get that first or default. So we have it in here. Now let's check. So we say that if this string in here, so let's say if this string dot is null or empty, let's specify our get email in there. So if this is empty, that is where you want to. If it is not empty, yes, that is where you want to handle this. But in case it is empty, then what are you going to do? We can return not found. That is all. Okay. So maybe can we pass in email not found? Maybe we can customize the message in here. And aside from that, in case it is we find it, then let's check if the password the user is providing is equal to what we have in this data or in this list. So how are you going to do it? You're going to use this user data. Since it's a dictionary, we can grab it, we can compare it straight away, and now move on. So we can tell that this is try get value, and on this try get value, we want to specify the get email that is coming as a key, and now we're going to have an out variable. Now this is going to be the password. So this out, this could be string. Let's specify that. Now so this is password, or maybe I can say this is db password. Okay. So in case we get it, keep it in here. Now the next thing to do here is we're going to check. So if you're going to say this is not equal, and now this you want to specify db password, and also we're going to specify the passwords coming in. If it is not equal, then what I'm going to do, we want to return bad request. So maybe we can say something like invalid credentials. Well, we can pass something like that. But in case it is valid, then what are we going to do? We want to have a method that is JWT token, and this method is going to generate it. So this is generate token. Now let's specify the email. So that is get email. So we need to then create this method. Then after that, we can return OK with this JWT token in there, and now we are done. So let's create this method. Control period. Let's generate a method for that, and that is a generate token. So in our token formation, we need the key as well. So let's inject iConfiguration. Then we say this config. Then in here, maybe we can have a look at. We can say this is key is equal to config. Then let's specify the authentication, and now the key. So we have our key in here. Now let's have our security key. So the security key here, but before we get this key, I think this key we have to get encoded. So you can grab this, and I will say this is encoding .utf8.getByte. Then let's paste in like that. Let's make it check for now. Okay, so let's have a security key, and this is going to be new symmetric security key. Now let's specify the key that we have in there. So from that, we need to create credential. So with this credential, it's going to be new sign-in credential, and now in that we need a security key. This is the security key that we have. So let's paste in this, and need the algorithm, security algorithm. So security algorithm that we can have. Let's use the HMAC256. Okay, then let's have our claims. Now this claim, since we have only the email, we're going to set only email as a claim. So in here we're going to have new claim, and now here we need to specify claim type dot email, and what is the value? Get email. That's all we need to do. Okay, so once you have this, now let's get our token, and now this equal to new JWT token, security token, and now in that let's specify issuer here. It is config. Then we can have authentication dot issuer authentication. Then we have our issuer. Then we need to specify audience as well, and the same config. We have our authentication. Then we have audience. Then what do you need again? We need our claims. So in our claims, we have the claims created already, and the next thing that we need here is an expiry. So this is going to be null because we are not having any expiration time in here. And the next one, let's have our sign-in key, sign-in credentials, and in here we have our credentials in there. So after we have this, the next thing is to return new JWT security token handler. The new JWT security token handler, and now in this handler we're going to write the token, and now pass in this token. So this is going to be a string because this write token returns string, and now I return it in here. Great. Now we have this set. Let's add, that is HTTP post, and now here we say this is register, and we have our public async task, and that is an action result. So we say this is register, which takes in string email and takes in string of what? Password. Then what are we doing? Before we move on, we should not forget this needs email and it needs password. We need to do the same thing here. So that is email and password. Okay, and these are the variable that we are passing them here as payload. Great. Okay, so register, what are we doing first? Let's have our await tax delay store 500 is what we need. Then let's get the same email. It's equal to user data dot keys dot first or default, and now in here we specify. Okay. Alright, so this is going to give us the first one, but we don't want the first one. What I want to do here is you want to look through and now select what we need. So it's equal to this email. Okay, now we are saying that if we have this as string that is null or empty, let's have our get email. If this is empty, then return maybe bad request, and maybe we can say that invalid, because here we haven't registered, so this is not now, user already exists. Yes, so user already, and now exist. Okay, but in case it is not found, then we're gonna say that user data, we can have a look at this, and instead of we can specify the email, that is the key that we set, and now the value is equal to password, and after that you want to return okay, and now say user created. Okay, so that's what we have. This is going to be our login and our register endpoint. Our login is going to return the token as soon as we are done. Great. So let's try only this, the endpoint, and let's check this out. This should run on HTTP. That is 7003. Let's wait and see. Alright, so this is ready, but I can see it is not locating to the Swagger. So maybe let's have Swagger in there. And yes, we have the Swagger, so we're going to configure that. Now in here, let's try to register. We pass in user to example and password. Execute this, and you can see user created. Let's log in and see whether you're going to return the token. And now let's execute this, and now you have the token. So you can grab this token, then go to jwt.io. Let's see that. So jwt.io, and let's verify the token that we have. So we see this algorithm, this is the type, and there is the claims. We have only one for email, and there is a issue and the audience. There's no expiring dates. Okay, so this is working. Now, in order for us to have a launch and straight ahead punch Swagger, we go to align settings, and in there you can see it is weather forecast. So change this to Swagger. And that is all. So the next thing to do here is, how do you restrict this? Now, you don't want people or clients to have direct access as what you've been doing to the other services. So in order to do that, we need to inject, or you need to include the library that we created, which contains a middleware which intercept requests and verify if it is coming from the gateway by checking a header, a specific header known as a referrer. So we need to do that. Let's see. So from our authentication API, right click on dependencies, then add project references. In here because we have a shared library, so let's add this, and in there let's go to the program.cs, and now where we have this, we need to add here. So we say app.use middleware, and now this middleware, it is known as, is it redirection? Wow. So let's go to our shell library, and that is a restrict access middleware. So in there, we're going to paste it in here. Yes, so if you don't know what it's doing, we created this middleware in the previous video. What it's going to do here is any request that comes in, is going to check this from the other service. It's going to check if it has a referrer which will be added through the gateway. In case it does it, then it does have, then it's going to continue on. But in case it doesn't have, then it's going to stop it. It's going to kill the request. You see? So any request that comes in must be first intercepted by the API gateway, and now within that interception is going to add a referrer header to the request. Now when it comes in, we also verify from the client, and I'm making sure this request is coming from the gateway, but rather not from any direct client. Great. So now this is going to work. Now when you run this again, if I try to register or log in, I'm going to have 403 that is forbidden. Let's wait and check it out. So quickly, let's try to log in. Okay, we need to register first, right? So let's see from a registration. Try this out, specify defaults, and I click on, you can see we have forbidden 403. And now when we put breakpoint at where we have, if I put breakpoint here, you can see that this will be hit and this is going to be null. And that's the reason why we have that. Click on this and this is hit. Check this. That is null. Good. So this is working. Alright, so now that we have this, what is the next thing that we need to do? Let's go in there and configure the upstream and our downstream in the ocelot.json file that we created. So we want to specify the route. Let's go to solution, go to your gateway, and on the ocelot file that we have in here, we need to make a copy of this, and now we're going to paste it in here. So you have to bring comma, then let's paste it. So you can see from here we are having an API and the controller name is account. If you cross check from here, you can see we have an API account, the name login, and now there is what we have parameters. It has 2 parameters, and that's what we are doing in here. So API account, and I was going to take in the first one is an email, and I'm taking the password. There's an HTTP, and that is a port of 500. So there's 7003. And aside from that, you have the same thing in here. So we have a downstream which is going to be accessed through the Ocelot API or the gateway API to this service itself. And now here is what the client is going to access with the help of this base address and now this specific route. So the user can get access to this by performing any of these method. So get, post, put, or delete. Okay, so now that we have this running on HTTP, we can save this peacefully. So the last thing that you want to do here is you want to create a middleware to intercept the request and now check if the user is authenticated. Now, if the user wants to register or log in, we don't want to check authentication state of that user. But as soon as the user wants to access a weather forecast API or the user API, this user must be authenticated. So you can see in our project, we have 2 projects added. That's an API or 2 services added. Now in each, we have the weather forecast controller and then we have user controller, right? From the identity, we have user controller. Now before user or client access any of these methods, this client must be authenticated. And we can handle that by using a middleware to check it. Bear in mind that we normally intercept the request, then we can now check and now kill the request or push the request. So let's do that. Now in our gateway, you see we have a middleware folder. Let's add another folder to that. And with this, maybe we can name this as token checker middleware. That's the name that I'm giving to this. So token checker middleware. Okay, and that is the name. So with this middleware, it's going to take in request delegate as usual. So it takes in request delegate, and I will say this is next. which needs to execute the next line of action. Then we have our public async, and this must be a task, and it is invoke async, which takes in HTTP context, and I say this is context. Now in that, we want to get the path, so we can, this is request path, and this equal to, we can extract it from this context dot request dot path dot value, so we can get it from here. And now let's have a look, let's check. So we say that if request path, let's check for nullability, and now if request path that we have in here dot contains, and now what are you going to check? In case it contains something like account, that's an API / endpoint as login, then we want to leave it. And now we can have string comparison that variant culture ignore case. And also we can just, let's make a copy of this, or in case it contains account, or in case it is equal to the home. So in case, so request path dot equals to this home, then we want to remove this first. Okay, then we want to forward it. So await, we have next, and I execute the next middleware. But in case it isn't, then what are you going to do? In case the URL does not contain any of this, then you want to check, you want to grab the authentication header. So we can say this is auth header. Then we say it is context. Now instead of having it, we can just straight ahead, we can say request dot headers. Then we can get authorization. So you can get this. Now let's check. So if this auth header dot first or default is equal to null, then what are we going to do? We want to have our context dot response dot status code. Whoa. So we have our context dot response dot status code, and we set this to status codes dot, and maybe we need to use 401, that is unauthorized, right? And after that, let's have await context dot response dot write async, and we can say that sorry, access denied. Here we can have else await next, and let's specify in the context. So that's all that we need to do in here. Now we want to check if the path here contains either any of these. That means you want to, the person going to register or is going to log in. If so, then grant it. But in case it isn't, then go and check if you can have a section known as a header known as authorization. In case you do have, then continue. In case you don't, then return this. So you can see here we are not actually verifying. So we are not checking for rows. We are not actually verifying if the header fits or if the header is what we need. All that you need to do here is we are just checking if it contains authorization header. So we can go beyond this, but for now let's maintain this and make sure that this works and secure our system. Right, so now that we have this, let's copy this. Let's go to our gateway program.cs. So our gateway program.cs. And now where we have this interception middleware added, we can make a copy of this. Now this should come first before this interception middleware, because this is going to work and check if user is authenticated. Then you're going to check in case it is login or register. Then this interception will just intercept it and now append the header section to it and now push it to the next middleware. Alright, so that's all we need to do to make this system work. Let's run the whole project and then check it out. So this authentication. Now right click on debug. Let's start this instance. Let's also check. Okay. Let's do it again, or let's rebuild this project once more. That is built. So right click. Let's go to authentication. Now let's start this. Let's make sure this is set to HTTP. Then start new instance. And when this gets started, we are also going to start our API gateway. Let's also start this. Then we're going to start the identity as well. Start. Now let's start the weather API. Alright, so you see that our endpoints are ready. Now if I click on weather forecast, try this out. Because I have 403 forbidden. The same thing applies to if I want to create an account. I must see the same thing because the middleware is working. Yes, and now for identity too, this API, if I call this, I have the same forbidden. Alright, now let's try to call them here and check it out. So first of all, we're going to call our API/user, and we must have the user data. So this is also access denied, because here we are not authorized, right? So how do you authorize? I have a postman in here, and that's what you're going to use to work. Now before that, we need to create an account first. So how do you create an account? We have this, and now the port here, it is 7,000. Okay, now it's going to an API account login, and now we have user at example.com with the password. It is post. So if I click on send, let's see what's going to happen. So we can put a breakpoint here from the account, or we can even put it from the middleware that we have created. So with this, it's going to now check. So as soon as I hit on this, it tells you that that endpoint is coming from any of this. Now let's put a breakpoint. Let's hit it. So if I click on send, let's see now breakpoint is hit. Now you can see the request path here has an API account login. So it means it's going to go to the next line of action. And as soon as I on it, let's see what we get. Okay, so email not found, right? Because this is login. So this is working. Now let's change this to register. And I'll click on send. And I can see, okay, so sorry, access denied. This is register. This is post. Click on send. Access denied. Let's put breakpoint. Now let's send. Okay, so I want to check the path. It is API account register. Do you have it here? Okay, so you have an account. Alright, so let's continue. And I can see that you have user created successfully. You can also add another one. So this is, we can just add user 1. Then click on send. Now let's wait and see. Breakpoint is hit. Request, and now it is this user 1. And now let's see, so you have it in here. If I click on step out, you see it's going to execute this. Yes. And now this is also created. So let's see. We are waiting for the response. And now we have this user also created. Now let's go to login. So if I try to log in, or maybe let's try to access the API, this user. We have created an account. We haven't logged in to have our authentication JWT token, and we are trying to access this. So the general port, the gateway port is 7000. Click on it is get. Click on send. I must have access denied. So you can see that I'm having status code of 401 unauthorized. If I go to weather forecast, let's see. Click on send. I have the same thing. Now let's log in and check it out. So from here, I have this 7000, and now it is a username and password. So you're going to log in. There's no more register because you have an account already, and that is login. Let's see whether we're going to have a token. Okay, so this email not found. Alright, so we just started, so you have to create. Let's say this is register, send, email created successfully. Now let's log in. Now you must have a token, and great, you have it. So let's go and copy this token. And now for us to make another request, let's say the user request, whereby if I click on get now, it's going to provide access denied, which is 401. Let's go to the header, and now this header, let's add authorization header. That is a key. And now let's add the value. So you have to type in bearer space and now paste in the number or the token in there. Then after we're done with that, let's make a send and let's check it out. So you can see now we have it, right? So if I go to the header, there's a header that came. Okay, so there's a body as well. So now you can see that after we've added that token, now we can make a request in here. Now if I change this to weather forecast and try to make a send, we're gonna have the record in here. As you can see, we have it because now our request has token. In order to verify, maybe we can put breakpoint at where, let's say weather forecast. So we have a checker. Maybe let's check from the shared library. This shared library contains this restrict access, and that is going to make a check here and check if it has referrer. Well, it's going to have it. Let's go to the token checker from our gateway, and now here it's going to check whether it has token from here. So let's put a breakpoint, and now let's go to our postman. Since you have the token added, click on send. It's going to get hit. If I click, you can see we have the token over here. And as soon as we have the token, we can go ahead and execute this. So you can see this token, we are not doing anything. We are not checking this token. We are not verifying. We're not doing anything. All that we are checking here is to check if it has a token, give it green light. You can go beyond this. You can go further by extracting even claims from this when you add claims. And now based on the claim that the user has, you can allow the user on a specific endpoint and more. All right. So we have successfully added JWT authentication to our microservices architecture using the Ocelot as our API gateway. So by doing this, we have significantly enhanced the security of our application, ensuring that only authenticated users can access our services, that is a user service and also our weather service. Remember, implementing security measures like JWT authentication is an ongoing process. So stay tuned for more videos where we will dive even deeper into securing our application and exploring advanced techniques. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and now hit the bell icon to stay updated with the latest tutorials.